Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Wizard Factory Live show here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as the One Great Work Network. Got a great show lined up for you guys today. I'm very, very excited about that. So, as many of you know, we began a three-part series last week covering the unique trials and challenges of the genders. So last week's episode was titled "What Men Must Endure," and was joined by Rodney and Will Keller. Amazing episode, honestly, one of the best segments that I've ever done. And today we're going to be continuing bringing that energy forward by focusing on the feminine side of things with what women must endure. We have two lovely female guests waiting to join the conversation, Stephanie MoDavis and Leslie Powers. And I think it's going to be a very exciting and very powerful, topic to continue on. And again, next week we'll be bringing all of the guests back to have sort of a roundtable discussion and get that dialogue, that real time man to woman, woman to man dialogue going on, and try to heal some of this shit, right? So welcome everyone to the live. I'm so grateful you're here. If you could please just give the video a quick like. That really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps the video be seen by more people. That's the easiest and best way you can support us. And yeah, so let's get this started. All right. So my name is Logan Hart. I'm the host, and welcome to the Wizard Factory. This channel is all about giving you the spiritual tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. If you're new here, welcome to our growing community of those seeking self-empowerment, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. If this sounds good to you, please remember the tribe. Join us, subscribe below, and let's kick things off. So, and as for that like button, don't forget, you know what to do.
Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
That's right. So, as you know, we like to start off this show with a little bit of astrological weather. So, we're going to be joined by Rodney, as usual, to get into that. All right, Rodney, you ready to mansplain some astrology to us now?
Yeah, we got some crazy stuff getting ready to happen, man. And it's interesting how these syncs keep popping up on the show. I mean, last week we were talking about the solar eclipse and the solar eclipse energy, and how that's going to be going through till 2024 because of the square of Pluto, right? So dealing with the masculine force, the solar energy, right? Now we're doing this. Now we're going to be dealing with the lunar energy, the lunar eclipse, in
That is
context
so
of the
funny.
feminine aspect. And of course, the show is on the feminine today. So it's like, we can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, we
I
don't
mean,
even plan this. It just keeps happening
right.
every show. There's always some kind of alignment there. It's
I know,
beautiful.
right? And those synchronicities are just really powerful, indicators of alignment, so when you're in this alignment and energy's flowing and things are connected and in alignment, you have this powerful manifestation that comes forth with everyone's just on, everything's just clocking and clicking, and I love that. I love that when that happens. So today I want to get into a couple of things on this lunar eclipse that we're getting ready to take place. So a lunar eclipse is when the Earth moves between the sun and the moon instead of the moon moving between the sun and the Earth, which is a solar eclipse. So this is a full moon eclipse, powerful eclipse in the south node of Scorpio. So what are we dealing with here with Scorpio? We're dealing with death and rebirth, endings and beginnings. We're also dealing with secrets. We're dealing with what? Hidden occult aspects, right? So when we're dealing with Scorpio, we're always dealing with what's hidden in the shadows, all right? That needs to come up, that needs to be revealed, and it's interesting enough that the Plutonian energy at 0 degrees in Aquarius is making a T-square to the nodes. So what is that doing? It's creating tension to actually route out things that have been hidden and secrets that have been under the ground, so to speak, in context to as above, so below, and vibrational correspondence, and bringing things up into the light. See, so it can be transmuted and transformed. That's what Scorpio represents. And so with this Plutonian energy really squaring the nodal aspects in context to the north and south node, the south node eclipse is what we're dealing with in context to the lunation and the full moon aspect that we're coming into on May 5th. So this is going to be a powerful eclipse. It's already intense. I know many of us have been feeling, as healers, and mystics and shamans, feeling this energy, this intensity that's been going on with the solar eclipse that happened at 29 degrees Aries. Now we're going to deal with this lunar eclipse in Scorpio, where everything then that we have been working to transmute and transform is going to culminate. This is an ending. Now, I want to tell you why it's an ending. Okay, so what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a square to Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. What happened at 0 degrees Aquarius a few years back? We had the Great Conjunction. Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct at 0 degrees Aquarius on December 21st at the winter solstice. Wow. So what's that telling us? This is where the needlecraft began to be rolled out in context to the Rona, in context to the bullshit that they dropped on us earlier that year in 2020, right? So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with an ending now to all of that aspect on a collective level in context, right? So it's going to begin to route out the secrets and the hidden aspects that have been attached to that inversion and to that bullshit that was rolled out. Now the effects, we're going to see the effects of that needlecraft now from here on out. We're going to see this. If there's going to be an incredible, I don't even know how to even describe it, but it's going to come to the light. And there's things that are going to be revealed that we hadn't seen yet, that we haven't really looked at yet, and it's going to come this year. That's going to come out. We're going to see it. And in context to, what is actually, happening there with that conjunction, that great conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn, what was really going on there? It was speaking to us of the Aquarian age, right? And this is the aspect that we're dealing with now, to the ending of all this and the beginning of something brand new that's getting ready to take place when the nodal aspects will move in mid-July into Aries and Libra. Libra being the balance and harmony in context of the South Node and healing that to relationships. So what are we dealing with here? It's a powerful, intense energy, trust and betrayal. We're dealing with the revealed secrets with relationships that have to come up and they have to come out so that we can actually have a trust now with these relationships as this particular lunation or lunar eclipse moves, as the north nodes move into that Libra energy. This is the ending of this. Okay, so there's going to be a shadow period in between the time of something that's ending and something that's beginning. The nodal aspects are at 3 degrees right now, so they've got a few more months before they move into Aries and Libra. But during this period of time, things are going to come up inside of you that are going to be revealed because of this eclipse. And you're going to have to face the mirror. You're going to have to deal with stuff in context to trust and betrayal of your own self first. So this next 2 months are going to be about looking at that, seeing that for what it is, seeing where you've betrayed yourself, seeing where you've maybe haven't, stepped into certain places where you needing to look at. And so literally asking the veil or the curtain to be pulled back on that in context so that you can actually see where you've actually been betraying yourself to your path work, because this is really, it's time to get real. This is saying, it's pointing to, it's time to get real. This is a great purging aspect that's been going on since 2020 with all of us. We've been dealing with all of this, all this shit that's been coming up inside of us and coming up, and we've had to transmute, we've had to transform, we've had to transmute, transform over and over in context to the alchemical process of calcination to coagulation. And so bringing our choices into vibrational correspondence in context to our state of mind now in alignment is imperative. We got to go higher here. We got to go deeper here. You can't just stay in your comfort zones anymore. It's not going to be allowed. You're going to have to make choices that are going to step you outside of that comfort zone into a place where you're really going to have to look at the mirror now. And that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees was all about stepping into your Aquarian energy and context, where your 11th house is, where your Aquarian energy is, and where that gate sets in context to your placings in your chart. And then dealing with those energies to not only your own self, taking care of your own self, but also what does 11th gate work with? Humanitarian aspects in context to human consciousness and bringing things into a higher place in context to the lightning bolt that Uranus creates in our lives in context to the tower moments that we go through when we're getting triggered. So all of that stuff begins to come up within us. We're going to have this shadow period with Mercury retrograde. We're in it right now to the beginning of June, and then all the way to the mid of July, where the nodal aspects then will move into Aries and Libra. So that's what we're dealing with this lunar eclipse.
Awesome. And what is the moon but a mirror? It's reflecting the light of the soul back at us. So all the projection and the bullshit, the externalization, it's time to turn that inwards and look at the wounds honestly. That's the only way we can bring about healing.
Yeah, you've got to embrace the pain to transmute it. If you run away from it or you wall it off, right?
Or blame someone else.
Or blame shift, right? Then you're never going to heal because you're still in your victim programming. See? You're still the victim to cause and effect in context to your choices. See? So you're not in freedom. See? You're not free. You're still a slave and you're still a victim to the circumstances of everything else, that's outside of yourself. See? Mm-hmm. And until you change the vibrational correspondence within you, you'll never change it outside of yourself. That's just how it works. It's just how it works, right? The other aspect that's going to go on here, and this is powerful because I've been looking at dwarf planets lately. There's a dwarf planet called Chaos. Literally, it's called Chaos, right?
Sounds nice place to visit in the summer.
I know, right? So Chaos is linked to the abyss, all right? In context to our disconnect as humanity with the higher force itself. Okay, so it's what is chaos, right? It's entropy, it's stagnation, it's all of the choices that we make that are in inversions and that are in alignment with the abyss in context of the shadow aspect, right? But where it's conjunct at 29 degrees with Venus in Gemini. It's at the almost 0 point axis in context to the summer solstice. When are the nodal aspects are going to be moving into Aries and Libra in the mid July in the summer, right? So we're going to be dealing with this at this point during our summer when the 0 axis in context of the Cancer energies come online with the sun. So the chaos energy is conjunct Venus. So it's bringing us back from that aspects of our shadow and the abyss aspect to our love for ourselves again, see? And our love for others and our love for the relationships that we have and reconnecting us with the higher force in context to this energy. I mean, it's amazing when you start to see how these conjunctions and how these things line up. Now, this particular aspect with chaos is going and the conjunction with Venus is going to be squared with the Neptune energies in Pisces, creating a very strong aspect to our shamanic aspect with relationships. How we're coming into relationship with each other on this higher plane of consciousness and our shamanic abilities and how we are then connecting those together to the 7th gate of Libra, which is what Venus anchors to that aspect. So we're bringing that together with love, see, and then allowing things to come out of the abyss, out of the shadow aspect to actually taking it back to the Norse, mythology of Ginnungagap,
Hmm.
which is the actual womb of creation. See what we're actually creating in the midst of this powerful womb of the universe that we're in, that's mirroring us. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, it's the matrix, the natural, the
Yes.
matter.
Right, exactly. So we're dealing with this 0 degrees, basically 29 0 degrees aspect between Gemini and Cancer on the actual zero axis of the summer solstice on June 21st. This is all going to come back up in context to that when we're with this lunar eclipse being squared off with the Plutonian energy at 0 degrees Aquarius, taking it all the way back to the Great Conjunction on December 21st, 2020. So all this is ending collectively with the needlecraft, and now we're going to see the actual results of who the choices that we made in context to that. I mean, wow, man, you just can't make this stuff up. It's amazing how the heavens they announce what's getting ready to happen.
Hmm.
you know and it's very prophetic, it's very profound. And when you start to see this and you start to get into these aspects on astrology, on your own internal life, in context to your templating, your blueprint, how you actually, your disposition is, how your system mechanics work, then you can actually get a hold of truth. Because literally what's happening here, Logan, is that truth is going to come to the forefront now in context to the endings and beginnings that were coming forth. Freedom and truth are going to be the narrative and the dialogue that's coming forth now. That which is hidden shall be revealed.
That's what the apocalypse truly is.
That's what the apocalypse
It's
is.
it's not always doom and gloom. It's just a revealing, and the destruction that follows that is only that which is needs to be destroyed by the light of truth. And it's
That
actually
that's
in
right.
service. It's a chaos, but it's that kind of hagalage. It's like cultivating. It's enriching and priming things for new beginnings. For things to be equalized, and then almost like a reset, the great reset, dare I say. I mean, looking at that, I mean, just to touch on that right quick, everything they do is a perversion of things that are actually, like the apocalypse, right? Is
Yes.
is seen as this doom and gloom thing
Right.
because we're so out of alignment with natural law. But it's that, and then so this great reset thing is something that is actually already in progress, and they're making their version of it because
That's right.
they're the gods on earth. They try to
That's right.
hijack and take everything and manipulate it.
Right.
But it's always good to look at the true versions of things and see that they're not always negative.
Well, and this is the narrative that they're spinning out in context to the videos they're putting out, and all this bullshit that's going on, to talking about the collapse of the dollar, all of this shit that's going on, that they're putting this doom and gloom out. You've got the Christian construct running the Armageddon program, in context to all this bullshit as well, and Jesus is coming back and we're gonna fly away, and everybody else is going to be a victim to the devil on the planet, and so this victim programming, and this Armageddon programming is trying to raise its head now again as well, in context to the energies that are presenting themselves on the solar spiral, and so they know what's happening, to the energies that are coming, and so they're driving their narrative to that reset in context to that,
Mhm.
but we're driving our narrative to the reset in context to truth and freedom.
Right.
See, and that's got to be our mindset. You got to get out of this mindset of doom and gloom and Armageddon bullshit and everything's going to hell in a handbasket in your mind. Because
Well,
that, you know what I'm saying? Because it's only creating vibrational correspondence in your own life to that.
right. It's
See?
taking your power back. It's like
Yeah.
if you're worried about what's going to happen, well, what part are you playing in that? What
Right.
choices are you making? Because that's what's creating the future and determining the outcome that will be manifest.
Right, because you create your future in the present, and if you're living in your past and you're living in your trauma based, aspects, and you're not in victim programming, you're creating your future from your past. And when you do that, you're on the loops, and you're never going to get off. You're never going to get out. You're
Right.
you're a slave. You're locked down in the tesseract, and you don't have the keys. You don't have the keys to unlock it, to dismantle it, you know? And so that's why they keep, they try to keep a hold of the reality field in context to the sine wave of Saturn. That's, and the inversions, they try to keep, to keep that going by rolling out all of these, videos and media and dark sorcery to the spellcast with not only words but symbols as well. So we're dealing with a lot of distortion, a lot of shit coming up. But again, you've got to keep your mindset on you working with the truth itself within yourself and allowing that truth to set you free. And that's what we do with wizards. That's why this is called the Wizard Factory, or we could say the Wizard Factor. So this is the factor of cause and effect in context to the truth that we wield, or the sword or Excalibur that we pull out of the fucking stone and we wield it to truth, to our own selves, and then outside of ourselves, as within as without.
Yeah. Very nice, man. Well, I appreciate that, as always, bringing your wisdom and insight and that astrological perspective. Always, just it's good to have multiple viewpoints of things and zoom out and look things, from that the macro perspective like that. So, yeah, I
because a
appreciate.
lot of people get caught in the temporal or the linear, time aspect. What's happening right now? And they can't see past that. Pisces, or the 12th house, is all about seeing the big picture, and tapping into your true spiritual nature and connecting and bridging that spirit to soul aspect. That's what
true.
the Piscean energy is all about.
If you're in that left brain modality, it is
Yes.
just totally linear, and you're not
Yes.
seeing the possibilities. You're seeing things as just kind of set and deterministic. Whereas in your right brain, if you're having that holistic intelligence, you see that the future is an infinite web of different possibilities that are accessible through choices.
Right.
And it has not come to pass yet. It's unwritten. It's still up to us. It's still open.
And this
And
is why
that's exciting.
the Norns weep, because of the choices of that mankind makes in context at the well. See,
Right.
And so as we begin to do this great work, this is called the One Great Work Network, right? As we begin to do this great work, we're actually shifting the consciousness and the timeline in context. So the more of us that do the internal work, the more of us that put the content out, the more of us that start to step up in context to truth and wielding it within ourselves and within and then without, the more we're going to have control of the reality field. It's just how it works. We're in a war on consciousness for the soul of humanity here, taking it to the AI timeline. I mean, that is soulless, and so we have to be able to realize that the organic technology that we have right here, context to the Aquarian energy, is what we need to master.
Well said, man.
So,
all right, brother. Let everybody know where they can find you on your own platforms.
Yeah, you can get a hold of me at heartcoreproductions9@gmail.com. Facebook at Hardcore Productions. You can actually book a session there. You can get a hold of me at Rodney Goodwin on my messenger. And then my website is, down here, Rodney Goodwin, hardcoreproductions.com. So these are the places you can get a hold of me for readings, to look at your blueprints, to break down the aspects of your disposition in context to that, and then bring things into a space where you're actually working with, planetary alchemy and high planetary magic. So very powerful.
Outstanding. Rodney, thank you. Pleasure as always. Appreciate you,
man.
brother.
All right,
and,
man.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, man.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. How we feeling? That's powerful stuff. Definitely good things to consider. And we'll now go ahead and get ready to get into the topical discussion for the day. Before we do, real quick, I just want to encourage everyone to follow the Wizard Factory, as well as my personal page on whatever social media platforms you prefer. I'm most active on Facebook. Wizard Factory also has an Instagram page as well, so do check that out. Links are in the description. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content. Awesome. Check out the initiation package. That link is down below. And one last thing real quick, do give the Patreon page a visit. It's $4.99 a month, and you get some nice perks here. And a shout out to the patrons, Edas Hugh and Slope Oak, as well as I see we have a brand new a new subscriber recently, AJK Green. So if you're watching, thank you. Welcome to the Patreon family. And that really does help out in a monetary way. Every little bit helps because this work is not easy, so definitely appreciate that support. So that's that. And let's go ahead and get ready to kick things off. So I want to bring on Stephanie MoDavis and Leslie Powers. Welcome to the show, ladies. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Logan, thank you. Hey, Steph.
Same. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Logan. Honored to be here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited to be getting into this with you guys, you girls. And I'd like to start by you introducing yourself and just a little bit of your background, your work, and kind of like what's your perspective that you're coming into this from, in addition to just being a female.
Leslie, please go ahead first.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Leslie Powers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in California. I have a master's in social work. I've worked in this field for over 30 years. I graduated in 1990 with my master's. So I've been doing this for a while in a whole variety of settings. I've worked in foster care, adoptions, school-based counseling, Alzheimer's, residential treatment centers, outpatient mental health, home-based counseling, and my emphasis in the last decade has been outpatient mental health, work in counseling, helping people overcome trauma. And I've also I'll add, as we're talking today, some of my perspective's going to come from, I was an athlete in my early 20s, throughout my teens and into my 20s as a Taekwondo athlete, and I was on the national team. And so I've had a little exposure into national governing bodies for sports and a little exposure to the Olympic Committee. I worked at the Olympic Training Center. So there's some context there that I think I can bring into today's conversation as well.
Nice. Stephanie?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie MoDavis, and my background actually is in teaching yoga, wellness, and holistic health. So at 19, I became severely ill and had an experience in depth with the medical system while I was a yoga instructor and business owner. And I saw how deeply disparate these two communities were of healthcare and self-care. And eventually I co-founded an organization called Awakening Healthcare, where I work on providing self-awareness, skills, and tools to empower patients to take control of their own health, simultaneously while informing providers on their own self-awareness is critical for the future of healthcare. So it's been very, very complex, also while embodying my own development within myself and my awakening journey. And I definitely come with the essential nature of being a living embodiment. and sharing my somatic experience as well as the information and the wisdom that I'm distilling from my experience. So I'm very much of an advocate of this female feminine power of coming into the wholeness of a female as being an embodiment and not being afraid to return to beauty and innocence and a state of pureness while I develop cognitively in sharing what I'm learning. So I do mentoring with individuals, primarily women who are trying to embody the holistic feminine perspective, and also do a lot of work with healthcare and major medical institutions around the country.
Amazing. So it's really cool that you both have a kind of a professional background in like the mainstream career, but you have the natural law perspective, and you kind of almost have like one foot in each world, and you can be act as a sort of an intermediary between the two, and you have that broader perspective of both worlds. I think that's really important and useful.
It's spot on, Logan. And it's also a difficult space to traverse because you sometimes don't feel like you completely belong in one or the other. And as the sophisticated feminine energy continues navigating this ability to be in different worlds at different times, I have learned, and she is the collective feminine, to purify my container and my space that I'm holding for all different communities and continue to show up as fully and honestly in my truth, even if particular communities are only halfway seeing the fullness of who I am. So Rodney discussing a lot about the truth coming out and the container and the womb and the space. This is definitely from my feminine perspective, the depth of my work lately has been purifying the space, the womb space that I hold, this creator space as a woman, and how I can distill the ways in which it's impure or working from a manipulation aspect or an unhealthy feminine aspect, and bringing forth more of this fullness of the purity of the feminine aspect, which can be beautiful and innocent and pure, and feel like she can give over more to the community without her being the need to be the center of it, being this space between so many different places.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a great lack of and a real need for people that can bring that in general. I mean, looking at the many communities that I could consider myself a part of, for example, there's often large gaps in the understandings of people. And I, not to like be boastful, but I kind of take bits from all of them and the sort of a syncretic manifestation of that, but I see them kind of very compartmentalized, where you've got new age people that are very into healing and self-love and all these energies and beautiful things like that, but they're very much missing the esoteric, the occult, natural law, true freedom, things like that. And then the
So
anarchists, they get it from the freedom perspective, but are often very detached from spiritual things. And, so there's just like these different sects. So I think it's so important to be able to be someone that is a part of all these communities and can kind of synthesize all of that and be the embodiment, most of all, to show like what are the benefits of being a more well-rounded and kind of evolved person that is incorporating multiple kind of approaches and sex walks of life.
Absolutely, you're spot on there, Logan. And it requires navigating these multiple aspects of containers or communities, as you're speaking about. You can't do that unless you know yourself, because you don't always get validation from these groups if they can't fully see you. So it really requires the feminine, this mystic aspect, to not seek any validation, to know herself and to know herself clearly and to be very clear as to what her mission is, so she can step into any role and know that not many people may fully understand her, but she has to be sovereign in who she is and recognize that her love is sustained and sourced from herself and the sacred, and that anyone else who wants to step into that space is a blessing. But it's getting away from the feminine that we have relied upon, which is I seek love and attention outside of myself to feel whole and complete.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what's had to die. And I've had to spend a lot of time in that mirror with myself and recognizing who I am with nobody. And if I can find love and sustenance for myself from source and myself, then no one out there is going to bring me down. And that's been my development and my lesson, because as a woman, our core wound has been, I want to be seen, heard, and loved and appreciated. So for you to be in this feminine energy, you have to realize that all of those things you desire come from within and from source.
Yeah. I'd like to comment a little bit because it's so interesting that Stephanie's going right to this issue of the feminine, because as I was sitting here preparing for the talk today, I was essentially came to the same place, but from a different angle. And it's that, my experience of being a female, growing up as a girl, right, has been having that deep desire. Well, I didn't even know it. I didn't articulate it as a desire, but there was a feeling, a sense of not being seen, in a sense, not being fully recognized, not fully being seen as like, where was my place? What was my role? What was my value? And I think that this experience happened, not on purpose for my parents. My parents were, solid, average, working class people. I wasn't, terribly abused, but there was an element when I look at their ancestry, where they came from, and my, my dad's family, going through both of them probably going through the Great Depression, the different impacts on them, each as men and women going through their historical experience. I was born into this family where, as a female, where at a time and place where I think that I wasn't, as a female, fully recognized and seen. So that was my experience. And over the years of not being fully seen, valued, heard, kind of empowered, there's a certain diminishment of my voice that occurred, and a self-doubt of my the value of what I had to say, or a sense that somehow what I have to say isn't that important. And that led to, relationships, being in relationship where those messages were repeated. And there is a certain freeze. I was thinking about this, that there's like a freeze response that happened. And I think happens for many women, where there's a certain confusion, and I'm speaking, of course, from my generation, which is different from the younger generations, but I had a very intensive pressure I felt to have to prove myself somehow, that I had value, and that value was being defined in a masculine container. To have to be like, where the feminist movement came, it's like diminishing the traditional feminine role, but valuing the masculine. So many women, and I hear this with my clients today, they're like 28 years old, of like, I want it all. I don't want to be like my mom, who seems like she was oppressed and didn't have a voice. And, and I'm thinking of a minority woman right now specifically. And so she's like, I want to have it all. I want to do it all. I want to be seen in my work, and I want to be a mother, and I want to be a wife. And there's this catch-22, I think, as women, where we get stuck in the, who are we? It's interesting.
And what's our role? The idea of gender roles is so demonized and just like seen as oppressive and all that. You're bringing up lots of points, both of you. My brain's going off on all sorts of different tangents, because it's all connected, and it's extremely relevant to things that are unfolding today. But one thing I wanted to focus on first is that you're talking about feminine self-worth and how that can be expressed, because that's really interesting to look at how women are valuing themselves and almost kind of evaluating themselves through a masculine lens as well. It's being, like you said, Leslie, it's done kind of societally as well, but I guess that gets internalized. And then they're measuring their own self-worth and trying to express or exert that I have value, I have a voice in a masculine way, which ironically is counterproductive because that's going to naturally kind of, even subconsciously, especially like a man and his instincts, is going to kind of discount that because it's not coming from that authentic feminine place. And so it's not only like that feminine self-worth and masculine self-worth are different. Of course, there's an intrinsic, just there's the basic sovereignty, fundamental being a human 101. But then the layers on top of that, there is a difference between masculine and feminine self-worth, and they're expressed in different ways. And so, ironically, the feminine who is in her feminine self-worth is not going to exert or assert that self-worth in a masculine way because it's incongruent. If she's truly in that, she'll be able to express and just embody that. It's self-evident through the way she is and carries herself and sort of expresses herself and all that thing. I hope that's making sense. I know it's a little convoluted, but
It does make sense, and I'd like to just parlay a little bit. Leslie and I have talked in the past, and we've, as women, I'm in my mid-40s. I don't know how old you are, Leslie, but I'm assuming about the same.
I'm older.
And
Yeah.
we both have had experiences having profound lengths of time being a single woman.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about embodying a dual energy to be able to support and sustain and contain yourself. And it's very, very tricky. I believe that some of the concepts that we're working towards, a woman embodying the feminine and the masculine embodying the masculine, takes two energies who have done the work to coalesce together so they can then individuate into those separate energies in a healthy way. Because I know throughout my process, I have had fear as a woman, not just being a single woman, but how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to get done what I need to do? How am I going to take care of the people that I need to take care of? And that hijacks the feminine completely.
Yes.
Because you are in a fight or flight. So I'd love to send this clarion call out as we work on healing these energies, that please understand some women have been forced for whatever way into this space of having to embody both. And no person, man or woman, should have to take on the role of two people. And I believe that that's one of the reasons women have become manipulative and angry and disenfranchised and whatever you want to call it, is because in this world, both of these energies are here to help and grow together and help each other. And when we're not together as a couple, it's impossible to fully embody one without having aspects of trying to navigate the other, which is not our natural state. So one thing I want to say is the union of these two energies, finding their way back together so they can fully let go into the feminine and into the masculine. One thing that's critical for me to share right now, and this blew my lid open a little bit, but I believe it's where we need to go. I'm offended in the world when I see men who are standing or becoming women in the sense of the diminishment of the true authentic feminine. Okay, I have to say that. And one thing that we're doing in our evolutionary community here is we're learning how to discern and to heal ourselves by separating ourselves into my masculine energy and my feminine energy. And I have a teacher who's been with her counterpart for many, many years, 15 to 20 years, and they've been teaching a very long time. And this is something that she stresses. These are her words, not mine. Men don't have an inner feminine, and women don't have an inner masculine. Those are performative, conditioned behaviors along our evolutionary process. So what I'm trying to sit with is to understand I've learned so much about myself through the right and left brain and understanding the energies of masculine and feminine. But as I proceed now, I don't want to have masculine energy as a choice within my framework. I'm fully feminine. So now I'm starting to see myself as a range of feminine energy and expression. And when my needs aren't met as a feminine, I may have particular behaviors that look like they're usurping masculine energy, but I'm not a man. So I think this framework eliminates potentials for people to get confused as I'm a man or a woman, because I have both of these energies within myself. So as I proceed on my learning journey, I'm still very much learning. I do not have this all figured out, but I'm trying to step fully into my feminine. And when I have behaviors that feel like an unhealthy masculine energy, think about that. When we say to each other, oh, you're a woman and you're in your masculine, you're usually not saying that if they're in the divine masculine energy. You're in an assumption that they're usurping the negative aspects of the masculine energy. Same with the opposite. Same with men in their feminine or women in their masculine. It's an assumption that you're here and it's the bad place to be. So if this makes any sort of sense to you, I'm just trying to, how can I heal the aspects of my femininity, get out of that conditioning that makes me feel like somehow I have to heal my inner masculine because I'm not a man. I have to get my needs met so I can continue to step into my femininity holistically.
Mm. Yeah, it's very nuanced and delicate. I'm like really thinking about how I want to get into this and choose my words carefully. And especially because it's like a minefield of wounding with this kind of stuff. It's any moment you could step on something and it just explodes for someone. And we're not trying to be antagonistic. The whole point of this is to actually bring understanding and unity back in.
Yeah,
So but to say to comment on to your point, there is, you can embody masculine energy, but it's not what's in alignment with your truest self, your instincts, even your higher self, one could say. And it's true that people have to do what they have to do to survive, and especially in the world that we live in, where you have to constantly be having income to survive. It makes sense. And but it makes it harder to stay embodied when you're constantly being forced into that. And then oftentimes, I say more often than not, especially about the average person, they sort of just lose complete touch with, it's not even they have to do both. They just get totally inverted, and then they look feminine and they like to wear bright pink and blonde hair and all this kind of stuff, but their energy is all masculine. It's about, I'm a bad bitch, like men can't handle me, and all this kind of, and it's like a sense of pride. It's
it's a,
very toxic and very in antithesis to what is actually, the truest form. Your own insides are yelling at you, but it's
right.
become so like hushed and diminished that you're not even paying it. That's how disconnected and almost like disassociated you are with your own body.
It's a cry for help. It's sad. It's a
Mm,
cry for help because instead of saying, I'm a single mother, I've screwed up, I need help, I can't do this myself. Instead of being radically vulnerable to help get her
mm,
needs met, she tries to be tough. And in my vision now, when I see that, I don't get angry. I get sad. And when I have a
mhm.
woman approach me in that energy, I try to be loving and say, is there anything I can do for you? Because
Yeah, I
I
look
can
at
see.
yeah. I think about, what's the origin of that spirit, that energy, and how is that become created, and where can I relate to it? Because I can see parts of me that have become hardened and bitter and resentful and kind of tough ass, and I can relate to that. I can see that, and I can ask, like, how did that get created in me? What have been the
Mhm.
experiences in my life that have led to my feeling a need to have this armoring and this anger? And you brought up the word hijacked earlier, Stephanie, and that was a word I had written down on my paper. And I think that there is an experience. if we were to, interview multiple women and ask them to describe all these various experiences of their life as a woman that has been, challenging, that they, it felt like endurance, right? Required endurance. We would have a lot of variety of experience. And there's of a lot of abuses, honestly, and a lot of very confusing and oppressive situations and bad experiences with men, and let's think about, okay, the Me Too movement and how that came out. So when that first came out, a woman identified an assault, or that she had been raped or been assaulted, and she supposedly, right, this whole movement got totally hijacked and it became manipulated. And that is my experience of being a woman. In a way, is that my true experience is been manipulated, and it's been used and hijacked in a lot of ways. And so, for example, like with the Me Too, I'm like, oh, this could lead to something good. This could lead to dialogue between men and women about how we've both been manipulated and our genders sort of, how we've been set against each other. And it's not just about women being abused by men, right? I was hoping for this real kind of dialogue, but it never happened. It was shut down. It was hijacked by an agenda. And so it really felt like, as a woman who kind of wanted to have a dialogue about, yeah, when I was 13, this happened. And when I was 16, this happened. And then, I can relate to this, what these women said happened to them. And, oh, this is a bigger issue. And how did the men get so confused, to be perpetuating this, like that never got to happen, because all of a sudden it was about this huge new agenda of the patriarchy and this whole new feminist, agenda being used to basically bowl over, and diminish the actual experience of women and men, both of us. So it's like patriarchy. I'm getting very triggered sometimes by this whole new patriarchy like push, because I'm seeing it as, it's not really patriarchy, it's Satanism. That's like using this whole toxic male patriarchy abuse as like making that an issue, when it's something be above that that's manipulating us all. And so when, as a woman, like look at sports, okay? When I was an athlete, I was on the national team. I was there was an international competition. There were two the year that I was on the team. I only got to participate in one because there wasn't a women's team for one of them, right? So there was this whole movement of the women athletes at this time advocating for equality in the women's sports. And that was just 35 years ago, okay? 35 years ago. And now what's happening? Women are now, sort of got their place in the sun, but now women's sports is being taken over by transgender rights. So all of a sudden, women are stuck in this weird catch-22 where it's wrong to advocate for us again, ourselves as women, as athletes, because we're caught in this catch-22 of, oh, you're being discriminatory, or you're being, and as a woman, even showing up today, the whole concept of like the whole definition of a woman's being put up in question. And like you said, Logan, every little thing that we could say could be argued with. We could be attacked. Just yesterday, okay, as a woman, I was essentially attacked by someone calling me a bitch, a cunt, and an arrogant poser by a man, who was threatened in some way, in an irrational way, by me, and felt that he could say those words to me. That's not that uncommon an experience. I've been stalked, I've, there's a, there's this light, this feminine beauty that that I think most women would like to express. And yet I'm aware that throughout most of my life, I've been very cautious about expressing my feminine beauty because there's different kinds of responses that are unwelcome.
Leslie, that's thank you so much for sharing that. And Logan, if I were to ask you as a man, what do you love about women? What would you say? What is like don't think too much. Just like say the raw answer, like why do you love women? Like just one thing. Don't try to
Yeah,
be fancy. Like
radiance,
they're beautiful,
beautiful, radiant. Yeah, it's
sexy,
their
beautiful, right?
it's their
It's
essence.
their
It's not
beauty.
about what they do or like, it's more of a beingness, the essence of it.
Right. And everything about beauty has been usurped by industry, capitalism,
Mhm.
and even men and women. We abuse beauty within ourselves. So I know a man who's a very conscious, intelligent man, and he's working on himself and doing the shadow work. And he said to me outright, he said, I know you're trying so hard to embody this healthy feminine energy. He said, but one of my core wounds is that I like the messy, toxic girl. She really turns me on. So then it's like, oh, okay. Now, like, what do you, and the woman is thinking, well, what do you want? What do you like? What can I be for you? What form
Mm.
can I show up for as you? What do you want? How can I be? Because I'm all things. What can I be? And there's been this discrepancy in learning curve and admittance of, yeah, sometimes I like the nasty. Sometimes I get caught up into the dirty thing. So as a woman, it's sometimes confusing. So that means you have to be sovereign within yourself and decide who you are as a woman and decide that you're going to show up like that. Because I know, and Leslie knows, if we went on any sort of social media platform, and even given our age, if we started taking our clothes off and talking nasty, our followers would quadruple in a day.
Mhm.
But that's not who we are. So we have to be very steadfast in what we want to show up as this form of wisdom and beauty, and realize that there's going to be a whole bunch of men who are going to go somewhere else where they can just get off by looking at the woman being sexy and being nasty on the screen. So add together this relationship that we can have to get together needs to get clear. And if you, as the collective man, want me to be beautiful, which is a place I love to be in, I need to feel safe.
Mm.
I need to know you're not going to abuse me.
Mhm.
I need to know that you can contain my many forms and understand that I'm on your side. There's things I need from you for me to show up in love and beauty as a couple, right? And collectively, I just think capitalistically, the world of Satanism that we're involved in right now, they know how to weave the webs to keep this all working for them and to keep us separate.
Mhm.
And I think that's the greatest sin, is that the powers that be, the dark occultists, psychologists, know how to capitalize off of our shadow and to keep us
Yes.
apart. Keep the real man and woman yearning for each other, but never fully being able to come together.
Exactly. And for those watching, to clarify, when any of us are using the word Satanism, we don't mean like worshiping this red horny guy. We're
Yes.
talking about the actual belief system of Satanism, what it actually is, which is basically synonymous with egocentrism or autotheism. I am God, I'm all that matters, my survival and what's right for me is supreme over anything else. That's basically the gist of it. And that's the mindset of most people. They are satanic mindset without even realizing it or subscribing to that in words. But it's interesting when you were talking, Stephanie, about the feminine aspect of beauty being kind of usurped. It's like it's either this superficial beauty that's just skin deep, and like I was saying earlier, wearing the pink and the big eyelashes and all this kind of stuff. Of course, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but we're looking at the overall kind of archetype where it's very superficial, the gym body, the obsession with looks and being almost this perfect Barbie doll thing, but there's no feminine essence behind all of that. It's not actually real feminine beauty. Or it's completely the other way, where that's seen as weak or not powerful in its own way. That's another thing I see too, is just the feminine at large doesn't recognize the the power of femininity as its own unique form of power. They see femininity as weak, and if you want to be powerful, you got to be masculine. And then they just call it feminine power, like girl
Yeah.
power, but it's actually just toxic masculinity, and not seeing that intrinsic power of the feminine in a
Right.
completely different way, where you don't. And just to round it out, we were talking earlier about, like, it's about how you're getting your needs met, right? And so instead of being assertive and getting shit done and being a boss bitch and all that kind of stuff, recognizing if you're actually embodying your feminine power, that you can attract all of those things through inspiring. You don't have to make things happen. You don't have to assert yourself and force yourself. When you embody that feminine self-worth, you inspire things to happen around you. You're magnetic. You attract things in, you inspire men to come and help you. And that's another thing too, that's a big wound, is like that's seen as weak if, you know, you need a man, when men need women just as much, just for different reasons. So it's not mutually exclusive to women. That's a big part too. And just being okay with
Yeah.
receiving a man's provision, because there's your feminine
Right.
self-worth, to actually accept that you are worthy to receive those gifts.
Let me comment on that, please. I think that this is where the social agendas have done a number, that women have been vulnerable, when women have become vulnerable. And in a sense, like, let's look at through the 50s, economically, when women were stay-at-home moms and householders, and it was created, I feel like, almost socially engineered to set up a scenario where it appeared as though the stay-at-home mom householder was a bad thing, because a lot of these women were not feeling fed, or seen or heard. They're feeling held back. And then there was this rebound. Like, I think that if you look at history, there's lots of rebounds in the polarity, swinging reactions from one period of experience to the next, right? So then that led to this whole feminist thing, and so you can see these swings. And so there was a meme that I saw the other day from a woman in her 20s that I know. I've met her personally, and it upset me. And it was like, I guess there was a Women's Day or something, and she's like, this Women's Day isn't about women celebrating being mothers or homemakers. This is about celebrating the opposite, that women are not those things, basically. And it was very extreme. It was insulting. It was really upsetting to me to see that this younger generation is really repeating this message, that being a woman, embodying a feminine, historically feminine role of like homemaker, mother, that's bad, that
Yeah.
it's undervalued. And so there's something that we need to bring back, this balance of like valuing motherhood, valuing the female body and its ability to bear a child,
Yes.
to give birth, to raise children. There is a difference. There is and to not value that and to actively be diminishing that, that's something that I find disturbing.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say, Leslie, in regards to what you're saying, I have a quote here by a gentleman that I like to watch. He says, "Truth and goodness only matter because beauty is." And he said, if reality didn't have intrinsic beauty, I would not actually care. So there's this thing of working towards the goodness and the truth and the beauty of this world, and the radiance and the luminescence that we all embody, and especially women. And not just women's physical miracles of being able to have a baby, but the energy of containment and holding space and loving and surrendering and forgiveness. And for instance, as we were talking about, someone had posted about, men getting fulfilled somehow by the nasty women. As a woman who's done a lot of work within my intrinsic balancing, I would much rather have a man be honest with me and say, yes, every now and then I do look at that. And I've been conditioned to objectify women, and I'm working on it rather than just to, avoid it or not be honest with me. The whole society focuses on objectification over consciousness.
Yeah.
And really, we have to inverse that. Is I'm never an object before consciousness. I am never an object before conscious awareness. And this is a huge task. And again, the powers that be condition us to stay stuck in the inversion. And anybody who has a traumatic childhood, who hasn't done their shadow work, can easily get usurped by what's out there to feel like they belong. So part of shadow work for me has been a significant amount of time alone, away from any sort of conditioning. I stopped reading books for a very long time. I said nothing in my field until I know who I am. Nothing. And then I have to hold that, because when I go back out, it is a minefield. It is crazy, the conditioning that's coming on to women and to men. So it requires, the only way, forward is through, as they say. And I do truly believe that the shadow work and us really individually having these conversations and working through the distortions as they arise, things are going to come up. Stay with it, work through it. Let's get through it together. In fact, we had something come up between all of us behind the scenes before this came out. And we could have all bailed and assumed and accused, but we're working with this because it's going to naturally come up as we're talking about this energy, because not any one of us could even barely begin to touch the power of the authentic feminine and masculine together. So we have to work through the complications and just be willing to say we've done it wrong. We're willing to start again. We don't know every single step perfectly. Let's just go in and do the best that we can. Let's try again.
There's a lot of catch-22s that come up, and Logan, you were talking about, ultimately, like, it would be really nice to allow myself to be really vulnerable and trust the masculine to hold that container and to hold my revelations, my revealing of my weakness, my vulnerability, my emotion, reveal that, and to know that as the masculine, that you're going to respect it, that you're going to value the innocence of it, the vulnerability of it, right? And not wound me. However, as a woman, in this day and age, and the experiences I've had, I have opened my heart. My experience, my first, I would say, not my first real serious relationship, my first marriage was the experience of, here's my heart. I put it out for you. Here it is. And it was played with. It was messed with. It was abused. It was like my heart was a weakness. And it was used against me. And I think many, many women have had experiences of that. And that creates a wound, right? It creates where vulnerability is not safe, where, okay, I need help. I'm a single mom. I remember I had a hard time. I had 3 young kids, single mom, couldn't keep up with the yard work. And I had this experience of the neighbor guy, coming and just seeing I needed help and offering to help me mow my yard and do all that. It was like an amazing gift. And I felt like this incredible, this is what it should be like, and yet I was struggling inside also with a lot of, some worry about accepting that help. Is it really safe? Is it really good? Am I doing well enough? So I think we have to acknowledge that the relationships that most of us have been in have included really, we've all been wounded, and we're expressing our wounds, and it's set up this very sort of confused reality for us right now.
Yeah,
it's
such a big topic in general, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of life. We begin our wounding with how we have relationship with our parents, our mothers, our fathers, that intergender relating and such, it can be very toxic from the beginning. And then that's just priming you, setting you up, and you're going to just keep repeating those experiences with your, your just regular relationships, especially your intimate relationships. And that just creates further wounding, which just perpetuates it further and further. So, like it's so many things comes down to balance. And you're talking about trust that has to be so foundational to everything you do. And that is always an extension of yourself. Because if you haven't cultivated that trust for yourself, how can you trust anyone else? Because you have to trust yourself to determine the trustworthiness of other
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
So that has to come first. And just because you entrusted someone doesn't mean you did something wrong. But if you continue to allow that, then you are. It's like you have to be willing to be vulnerable to actually bring about that polarized relationship, that polarized container.
Yeah.
But that's why it always comes back to the self-worth. You have to value yourself enough to be vulnerable, to say, my heart by itself is enough. I don't need to add all this extra, the judgments and the leading and all this kind of stuff. You're just, this is me. That's your feminine self-worth, first of all. And then if that isn't respected, your feminine self-worth kicks in and says, I've got
Out of
better
here.
places to share my energy with.
Yeah.
And
And
that's so important.
sadly, many women and young girls, they don't have that self-esteem, and they don't have the clarity that, as men and women, we haven't had the initiations. We haven't had the true feedback from our families and the world that as a woman, as a girl, I'm really valuable. As a boy, you're really valuable. And I don't think as a society, we've done that. We've done that well. And so there's this betrayal of self, right? So I can think back and see a million zillion examples of how I betrayed myself over and over and over again by allowing, certain patterns to remain, or certain relationships to remain, right? So you're right. Like it's an inside job. First, we have to realize, like, why am I allowing myself to suffer?
Yeah, Leslie, this is very much a combination of the wounded feminine and the wounded healer.
Yeah.
Is you're supposed to contain, you're supposed to care, you're supposed to put up with my messiness no matter what I project on you, and love me back and show up beautiful doing it. So it's complex because you want to be that person. The woman does, that's her nature. She wants to care. But then often we start caring for the wrong people, and we continue to care in the wrong circumstances. And then we feel guilty if we're not caring, and it is very nuanced, and it's very tangly, as you said, Logan. And it's one thing where you're only going to start to develop the discernment with self-healing, mirror work, shadow work, and then taking steps of trial and error again. You're gonna have to go back out and be willing to get hurt again. You're gonna have to keep doing that in the field. At some point, you're gonna have to step back out into the field and give it a go and see where you're at, and then use the best discernment you have in that moment to make a right decision, knowing that you once again may be hurt again. But what's the alternative? To give up, and to give up on this divine union that we're all so much seeking? No, we don't want to give up. So we have to keep trying and just go back in, build the resilience together. And I believe societally it's coming. I think that we're ready, and enough people realize what has happened and that we're ready to step back in. And my hope is that as we continue to come together in coupling and do the work together,
It has to be.
to work towards that divine union, that will be that energy of confidence, and the man and woman together will be able to break up some of these massive gender distortions and things that we have going on, because they will both be empowered to speak up, together and say, this is not right. There's too many men I know today who are passive and not speaking up appropriately, and too many women who are also not speaking up to defend what they know to be true. So we need these people who've been doing the work now to gain enough confidence to go out and share, and then coming together. I think that'll be next level healing.
Yeah, I actually don't think it has to be either or, like many people say that, oh, you need to just be by yourself for a while. Like, there's truth to it. I think you need both. You need to be alone enough to cultivate that self-worth, to learn, hey, these are where my boundaries are. This is what I will and won't tolerate. And this is also kind of how I want to show up and operate. Also, it's that externalization of how you're relating. But if you're not putting yourself in some kind of scenarios to actually practice that, then it's all kind of theoretical. It's almost like mental masturbation of just like, oh yeah, I've done all this healing and I'm so good. And then you get into, your first relationship, you have some big blow up and you're just like, oh, I guess I have more work to do. So
it's so true, Logan. I mean,
it's like spending all your days in the gym practicing against a punching bag. Like, you can be really fast and know all your combos and all this kind of stuff, but then you fight a real person and you just get your ass handed to you, because you have to have that real world experience. And I think having both is very important. Now,
relationships will bring up the unhealed and the unconscious, right? So hopefully doing the work on yourself individually to be very aware, to be a good observer and witness to yourself. And then when you're in relationship, I guarantee the thing will come up with, it will blind you and catch you off guard. Your blind spot will be hit and you'll be like, wait a minute, what just happened? And there's work to be done. It just will happen.
It's not mutually exclusive, Logan, as you said. I think that moving towards the new form of relationship needs to encompass that paradox of being alone and being together, more frequently, spending time alone to regenerate on your own within the context of the relationship. So there's not that codependency, because I think that's what's been the biggest, breakage within the divine union has been, well, I rely on you for my self-worth and I rely on you. And we've lost our sense of self and our own mission and purpose within the context of us being here. So how do we remain sovereign within self and with another simultaneously without taking years, so to speak, in one or the other, learning a lesson? How can we start to bridge that gap, narrow that space, and do it both together, self and other, and just work it together?
Because we're individuals as well as part of a collective, both, men and women, the human family, all of that. It has to go hand in hand. And if, whether you're single or not single, like, it's you can apply these things, because even like what you mentioned, Stephanie, we had kind of a thing come up, I'll just put it that way, that we had to navigate. And I'm a single man, and it had nothing to do about intimacy or romance. It was just, I saw a need to kind of lean into my masculine and say something. And it was very, very well received by both of you. And it worked. And that was good confirmation for me that I am doing the work and it is working, because I didn't show up in a aggressive and domineering kind of way. I was in my masculine, but speaking from my heart space. And I made sure that you could feel the care behind what I was saying too. And, that went really well. So.
Right. And we weren't afraid to speak back. So this is when that you're getting somewhere, is when you lean into the discomfort, you say what you feel, and then there can be a dialogue around it, not where you feel shut down, right? That's a big thing with feminine energy. If she's wounded, which let's say, let's express it, a lot of us have this within our history and our DNA, is if a man comes on too strong, she'll shut down. She'll shut off and the spirit will diminish.
The shields go up.
She'll shut off. Yeah. So there has to be a level of discernment with the masculine energy who is working on the masculine. Who are you dealing with? And can she handle where I'm at, or will I just shut her down? So again, it's complex and it's nuanced, but all I can say is having these discussions I feel very honored to be a part of, and they need to happen more often. And we have to lean in and not be afraid to say what's coming up, even if it doesn't feel enlightened.
Mhm.
Just say what you feel so we can get it out and hash
Right.
through it.
Honesty is key.
There's
So I just I'm looking forward to speaking more on relational aspects, and I think that's going to be like the focus of part 3. So I would kind of like to pivot and focus more on just the
yes,
feminine struggles, kind of go with the theme of, what women must endure. So, we've touched a little bit on childbirth, or just being a mother. I think that would be a good place to kind of get back
yeah,
to that and speak on not just the process of childbirth, the trauma of being, the hospital experience and all of that kind of thing, but then single motherhood, as that carries on. So
yeah,
I'll leave that open for you to
yeah.
jump into.
I'd like to speak. One thing I'd like to say is about this, what I've seen a lot for many, many women, and I think it applies to motherhood a lot, is a certain in training to be a martyr. This idea is a good mother is self-sacrificing. A good mother doesn't put herself first. She's always putting others first. A good wife, even, like, if you're going to look back, is taking care of her husband in a way, like putting her needs aside. And that's, I think, a very toxic mindset. And I've
Imbalance.
seen it, to extremes, like with some of my clients. There's many, 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 many women who end up falling into this caregiver role where they are fully sacrificing like their own health and
Yeah.
well-being. So that's out there, that women need to face and feel and understand, like, what am I doing? What is this pressure to caregive, to be this martyr, to not address oneself? But when, as a single mother, my experience was I really tried not to fall into that, very much tried to keep a balance within myself. But I was a single mother trying to balance everything, nearly impossible, because as Stephanie said, you can't be both a man and a woman and a mother and a father. And yet there's often it's just assumed that you just can or have to as a woman, and if you don't live up to it, we're very self-condemning.
You're failing, all
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
I would say that's an aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have children, and I can't have children. So there's an aspect that I don't understand about what it's like to physically give birth, and an aspect I don't understand about what Leslie just described. There's also a subtle, deep pain within me that I'll never get to experience that. And as a woman who embodies the nature of care, my work is, well, how do I take that out into the world in an appropriate manner now? Because I still have this yearning and desire to care and to hold space. So how do I do it in an appropriate way with other people, where I'm not interfering with other people's processes, where I'm doing it in a way where I'm allowing them to be on their journey without imparting my care and my vision and into everybody's experience. So there's things. Leslie and I only represent a small portion of women, and we're both white, so there's a limitation there. There's different cultural things that we can't speak on. But even the two of us here, I mean, there's a vast difference between what we experience with somebody who does have children and then what somebody who can't have children feels like. So even women amongst women, there's sometimes this confusion and jealousy. And, I've had single women say to me, oh, God, I'm envious of you because you seem like you have freedom and you don't have to worry about this and you can do whatever you want. And I look to them and say, well, I'm envious of you because I can't have that experience of having my own child. So there's a lot of work that women need to do with each other also.
Oh, yeah.
Before we even start doing it with men and other people, there's a lot of love and connection that needs to happen amongst us.
Yeah, there's a lot of wounding to the sisterhood where women aren't being good sisters to each other and instead falling into that dark competitive, petty.
Yeah, Leslie,
kind of.
I have to say, I heard this the other day on a podcast. They were talking about men being more competitive than women. And the gentleman said, and his wife said, let me get things straight. Women are just as competitive as men. They just do it covertly. with manipulation, with mind games, with things like that.
Mm.
So there is definitely an aspect of that's working on healing the wounded feminine and working towards the more embodied, honest, vulnerable, flawed woman that we all are.
I would like to add too, this is a perfect example of the inversion, because even though it could be even argued if women are more competitive than men, but the point is, I would say competition is a masculine energy. So what does that say to how inverted things have become, that women are arguably more competitive now in modern day? Because it's coming from that place of wounding, and they're competing with each other, they're competing against men. It's they're in that energetic space, so that it's a complete betrayal, and being at odds with the true feminine spirit that just wants to connect and to be tribe, and everyone's together, everyone's connected, everyone's loving each other.
I think that comes down to first chakra energy, which is I can easily speak on why a woman would feel the need to be competitive is because she doesn't feel safe and secure and doesn't have a strong foundation. So this is again when we partner up, when we're doing our work, when we're looking at this holistically, the woman can feel safe to not be any of those negative energies. So there's just a lot of work that needs to continue to happen on both sides. We can't just bypass the work and look at the ideology, which is something that we can get good at, and say, well, women need to be in their feminine and feel safe. There are so many layers and chains back to why that's not happening. We have to break all those chains first before we can just say, I'm very comfortable just being in my feminine in this world where everything goes against somebody being in that space.
It's kind of gratifying to actually have a venue to be able to speak out loud about all of these wounds. Like, this is about what if women endured. Well, I have a lot of things I can say about that, and I kind of want to, right? And yet I have a part of me that's holding back, that's like, oh, don't be a complainer, don't come across like a whiner, don't be like, oh, poor women. I'm not that, because I've also, through my experience of being especially like a single mother for 14 years, that I've had to develop the armor and the toughness, right? And I don't want to admit, that I've felt very, downtrodden in some ways, or felt like I'm fighting against things to keep my head above water, or, had men who didn't step up, to provide and ease the journey, that could have happened. It could have been very different. Right. So if I'm going to be really honest as a woman where I'm at today, it's like being really honest that I've felt very, it's the wounds that I've experienced, and the challenges are a really important part of that, to be able to just acknowledge.
Yeah. Leslie, I love what you're saying, because I feel that so deeply is, what have women had to endure? Where do I begin?
Yeah.
Without sounding like a victim, because that's
Right.
not where I choose to be.
Yeah.
But if we're going to have an honest conversation, and this is where I feel sisterhood really comes in, for us to make sure that grit, that rawness of those wounds and that BS that we've endured, it needs to come, it needs to express,
And
to come out.
That's for me been the most fulfilling place, because I do have a women's circle that I meet with almost monthly. And that is like where I feel really safe, honestly, in this particular group of women, to be very real about the ups and downs of life and what it means, And I think outside of that circle, it actually doesn't feel very, I'm cautious. I'm cautious even to speak here, because, if you look at things that people say in comments to videos and things that women say in the world today, like I feel like, whoa, I'm putting out a lot of opportunity for people to attack me. I've spent most of my life being pretty behind the scenes, pretty invisible. I've done a good job of making myself kind of small. So me coming out on these platforms is really unusual. It's new. And so I've had to face that fear of being seen, like my whole life wanting to be seen in a sense, but being very afraid of being seen.
Ooh.
And now we're being seen,
Yeah.
maybe. And sometimes we like maybe not being seen by many, we want to be seen by more. But yeah, it's interesting dance.
Leslie, I'm right there with you. Is I did very well operating from behind the scenes, and I've learned that I need to put myself out there if I want that wound to be fulfilled. I have to fill that gap within myself. But you're right, because when I come forth, it's my heart. It is my heart. And so many people are not set up in this time in history to recognize that. And the heart is sensitive. It's sensitive. And it can only break so many times before your spirit diminishes. So rebuilding the spirit up within myself again and feeling my heart get stronger has been really critical. And then how do I endure criticism from men and women when I express my truth from my heart and not let it put me back into a box? It's a strength that I'm working on as a woman.
Yeah.
To how do I stand in my heart no matter what? And I'm going to fuck up. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm only at this place of development that I am today, and tomorrow I'm going to be somewhere different. I'm learning, I'm iterating, I'm evolving, but that doesn't mean I can't come out today and share where I'm at today. It's just you have to be willing and you have to be strong enough to deal with the haters and to not go back into hiding.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing that the fear of being seen is like, how do I put this? So you have the intrinsic desire to be seen, and everyone's having that, but everyone is also feeling very shut down. So when you put yourself out there to be seen, then you are opening yourself up to be vulnerable. And that's going to trigger other people because now you're doing what they wish they had the courage to do. And rather than step up and be inspired by that, it's easier for them to just try to tear you down and attack you and just give you the same exact abuse that created their fear in the first place.
Logan, I heard somebody say, you're never attacked by someone who's doing better than you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
True that.
Yeah.
It's so like, for example, as a woman, I was a bit of a tomboy. I'm kind of a natural woman. I've never been the one to put on a lot of makeup. I don't even blow dry my hair. Like, I'm kind of fought against a lot of the stereotypical kind of things. But yeah, I've dabble in that in different areas, right, of enjoyment. But here I am doing videos, right? And sometimes I think, oh, I'm going on a podcast. Oh, maybe I should, some women are probably spending a lot of time putting on makeup, fixing their hair, adjusting their outfit, putting a lot of time into it. Probably much more than any guy does. Some do, okay? But that's, as a whole, women are a lot more worried about their appearance and how they're going to come across. I'm most of the time don't wear makeup. I'm more likely to put on a little makeup. I'm wanting to make shorts. I'm doing videos and I'm like intensely self-critical of the wrinkles that I could see on my face in the video and thinking, oh, I'm not posting that. I need to get just the right lighting. I have to appear in a certain way that I am not going to be seen as, this still exists.
Yeah, Leslie, I have to say to you, I had a friend a little while ago. She said to me, Stephanie, I went back and watched some of your YouTube videos. And she said, man, I love you because sometimes you just don't even care what you look like. And at first, I had a guttural reaction where I was like, what is she saying? Yeah. But then I realized the beauty of that is that when I have something important that feels mission related, that I'm passionate about, and I want to talk about, that needs to be my focus. I need to look at that as the appearance of who I am and not specifically what I look at. But challenging other people, this is part of self-development as a woman, is what are you focusing on? Appearances? And again, can men even recognize like, wow, this woman has put a shit ton of work into her appearance and I'm not really interested in what she's saying, but I really like her, as opposed to like a more casual woman who's really speaking from her heart, just becoming aware. And in essence, Leslie, you and I, there's this collective feminine energy that feels in some respect the not being seen is like a father thing. It's like I want to prove to daddy that I'm like the good girl and I'm worthy and I'm seen and I'm doing the right thing. I want to do the right thing. I want to be the good girl. I really want to be the good girl. And there's an aspect of that where as we develop in our energies is there's nobody that we need to seek approval from anymore. It doesn't matter if there's a million guys or people who would rather watch the girl who looks all fancy and does the thing. Cool. Like, actually, I feel nothing because there's going to be people who resonate with me as I am without any approval seeking needed.
So you're demonstrating a woman who has really done that work on yourself, that you've evaluated these things, you're aware of it, you've transcended it. But, and I have to a great degree as well, though I keep hitting edges, right?
Sure,
as I'm out doing this work, I'm hitting that edge in me that's like, oh, I feel a little shame, or I feel ageism, or I feel a little bit of like, oh, and so, my thought is, okay, I'm going to keep pushing forward because I have a mission and principles that are more important. Right. And so I'm continuing forward to the point where I was like thinking the other day, I want to do a video about like, this is for women who are afraid to be seen, because there's too many women who are running up against that wall and then they're afraid to put themselves out there because of that self-consciousness and that feeling of vulnerability. And I think that it's, women who ultimately, through embodying our full spectrum of feminine energy, that really is important for the healing of this planet. And that means coming forward as we are, without fear, without embarrassment, without shame.
That's the interesting thing about it, is that when more women are truly doing that healing and embodying that feminine care, then they'll feel that self-worth extended by being more willing to just be themselves, to show up, to be, to put themselves out there. But they don't feel threatened by other women doing the same. So then those women will feel safer in doing so, because they don't have to just worry about, the men. They got to worry about the women too, like being really catty and critical and things like that.
Logan and Leslie, I want to say something. And, all of us are familiar with, the One Great Network and Mark Passio's work and natural law and the importance of self-work and knowing thyself and healing thyself. And one of the reasons that I've gotten to this place, and I work on it, there's an endless amount of work to be done, right? So it's never like I've accomplished something and I'm done. That's never going to happen. But one of the reasons as a woman I can come out now is because I have nothing left to lose. I've suffered so deeply, physically, spiritually, emotionally. You guys know I had like multiple organ transplants. Like, at this point, I've got nothing more to be afraid of. I realize now, when you hit that place of like, what else do I have to lose? I don't have anything to lose by being myself. I have to be myself. Then I start to bridge that gap into seeing what it is I can gain by being myself. And for my entire life, I have yet to really taste that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that it's because of the ways I felt wounded in relationship with men that I am now strong enough to show up on the camera. And when, if I've been attacked, it doesn't faze me so much,
Yeah.
And yet there's the risk of becoming too hardened, like those women boss babes, that like Logan, you were referencing in the beginning, that can go too far to the other side of the pendulum swing, where then the coldness happens. And that's also an issue where women are becoming very cut off from their emotion from with men, and from cut off of even accepting pleasure and joy and love from men, so there's a softening and a melting, I think, that women often need to do to kind of come back, right? And it's hard. I would say that's one of the hardest parts in my life, of like needing to be tough as, let's say again, single mom, having to financially support and always have this pressure to be the supporter of the family, and yet be available for my kids. And yet, so it's very hard to find the time to then relax, and so this system that we're living in culturally, and then in the relationship world, is making it, I think, hard for a woman. It's like men too, obviously, that's why we're talking about this, but it's sort of like I have to push, and I have to be in this world, and then I've got to like consciously turn the energy opposite direction.
Yeah. What's so interesting, Leslie, I want to, as you're talking, it's reminding me of something interesting about social media and showing up on videos and putting out product and things like that. Is I've discovered through just a lot of witnessing and observing that if there is a woman who's very boss babe-esque and she's like real popular, the men that usually are attracted to her, I think that there's a subliminal, like actually that man needing to embody the strength that that woman is displaying. So it's kind of like, if you really kind of look at things from a more observational view, who are you watching and why are you attracted to them? Like, is it something that you just really resonate with, or is it a quality that you're actually seeking to embody?
Right.
And coming out as a woman, speaking by myself, I'm hoping that people are watching because they can resonate with that. Not that there's something that they're trying to get from me. And I think as a woman, that's a wound that we all carry. Like you said, when your neighbor came over to help you mow the lawn, is we want to receive from men, but there's this systemic overlay of, if you do something for me, that means you're expecting something from me in return. So then it's like, I'm afraid to receive because I don't know what you're going to do, or if you're going to come over. There's a fear with the receiving. So I'm working on how can I receive and open myself up without assuming that somebody wants something back from me.
So to me, the cost is either I get, I receive and then it's turned against me, right? That's been an experience. Or I receive and I'm expected to give. And for women, often it's a sexual expectation. That is the reality for most women, having to have gone through their life with tons of sexual pressure from men as a kid, 13-year-old, 19-year-old, as a 16-year-old, 22-year-old, like adult men coming on to young teenagers, very common experience. Okay. Then as adults getting in relationships, the pressure to be sexual, to give in right away. That is, so women are spending so much time having to put boundaries up and say no or give in because they've been conditioned to think that's what you're supposed to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to, please the man. I'm supposed to give in to this pressure. This is the way it's supposed to be. It's happening all over, or like, no. And then oftentimes then having force, different levels of force against that no, or, losing out on the relationship altogether because of saying no and setting a boundary. That's often a risk and a fear that women have.
You know what, Leslie, what I'm feeling right now is the causality of the effect of the boss bitch. Is women have gotten to this state of, I don't need a man. I don't want to, I'm good. I'll do it myself. Because there could be a very deep fear of, what is it going to cost me if I do soften? What's it going to cost me if I soften?
That's it. You hit the nail on the head. And I think both are kind of coming from a wound, is that both a woman asserting boundaries, not having boundaries, but asserting them, or just not having them at all and just receiving and having the consequences of that if it's a type of a manipulation. Both of those things are coming from a wound. Whereas having the balance is having internal boundaries, but not asserting them in a masculine sort of way.
Right. So do
because
you know
there's
what
that
that takes?
expectation of reciprocation. This is where, again, there's so much nuance to all this, because there's all these different ways that things can go.
Yeah.
There's the fact that, you know, the self-worth tells you it's okay to receive. It's not the receiving part that's actually a misstep. But if, and you don't know the intentions of the other person, if they are doing something to manipulate you and then expect something in return, that's when your self-worth kicks in as well and says, I'm not accepting your gaslighting. Just because I received doesn't mean I owe you something.
Yeah.
And not accepting that as well, and then being able to flow away from that situation. Hopefully they don't make it so that they're keeping you there, you know, or using force of some kind. But
Money,
right,
financial.
but
Yeah.
it's that, you know, being able to receive, you know, just allowing yourself that, because not coming from the wound of like, I'm not worthy of receiving provision or being served in some kind of way, but then also not tolerating when that is then used as a manipulation tactic, you know.
Yeah, this is where the self-work again is so helpful as we evolve, is that the discernment comes in. And then that initial meeting with somebody on the street who you don't know, who's a man who says, I'd love to buy you coffee. Can I buy you coffee? And your mind immediately goes through the filters of the wounding of like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how can you be in a state of discernment in that moment to feel enough of whether or not this feels safe and appropriate, or I need to set a boundary here. So that's where the self-work in my respect has been so helpful, is because in the moment when something's presented to me, I can react with a bit more conscious awareness than that just receiving out of, you know, or denying based off of the past.
You know, I was thinking about how I think a lot of women, from that place of feeling confused and somewhat disempowered, have numbed out and complied with a lot of the male pressure, and disconnected their minds and their bodies from relationships in a lot of ways. To that having shifted to now a trend where women are now, it's kind of like, okay, no more dissociation. We're now going to take charge. We're going to become more of the initiator. We're going to be sex positive. We're, you know, all these different variations of roles are, I think, almost like a response to like get out of, a way of getting out of another of that paradigm that was not satisfying or fulfilling before. I don't know if that makes sense or if other people agree that
Are you saying like kind of like that woman stepping into more of that dominating role of like, well, I'm
Yeah.
going to take initiative. Well, you know what that is to me, in essence, it feels then like she has control.
Right,
Because
exactly.
the issue with the control thing, and that being the masculine energy, is there has to be an understanding that so many women on aggregate have felt so out of control and used and abused, that there has to be a healing before we can automatically feel like I'm going to give all of my trust over to someone again.
And it's like an overcompensation.
An overcompensation.
I
And
feel totally out of control and powerless. So then they step into that control just to have some semblance of that, not recognizing that, again, they can get their needs met through the feminine avenue without needing to resort to that.
That is that's a beautiful question of, can we not polarize so much in order to come into harmony? Because there
swing
is
the pendulum.
There is information in the swing of the pendulum that's essential. But how can we bring conscious awareness and not swing so far to get what we need to be able to try to remain more in balance?
Calibrated adjustments.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing in the trends of, you know, like people I'm talking to in the world, more and more women are embracing this whole like idea of well, there's a trend going on in general where sexual activity is being very disconnected from the sacred masculine feminine union, right? And I think part of that is a pendulum effect, and it's being manipulated by the media and society to pull people away. We're kind of I'm drifting, sorry, into
Yeah.
another.
Leslie, that to me, I hear that too. I know a lot of women who, they just go out and have sex like it's no big deal. And, that may sound appealing to some, but in essence, isn't it just a protection mechanism to not get hurt?
Yeah.
I kind of polarized in the opposite direction, where it's like, I'm not going to get involved with anybody until I'm very clear. And that's extended into a very long period of time. So now I'm realizing, okay, Stephanie, it's time to go back out into the field again and start to demonstrate and see if what you've learned and integrated can be put into action. But yeah, that's what I've heard too, that a lot of young people are just connecting and, polyamory and to me,
huge.
it's an escape and an excuse to do the work and work it through with your counterpart.
Yeah. I'm going to take a break for just a moment. I need to get my dog because he's barking.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So again, kind of pivoting back towards the topic of motherhood, and I know, Stephanie, you said that that's something that's not biologically accessible to you. So that might be a good place to kind of dip into that topic, both because that's just as valid of a feminine struggle as being a mother and a single mother and going through the childbirth process, though it's different, but not being able to have a child
Logan, childbirth, from all of my friends and family and what I hear, it's a clear initiation for a woman. It's an initiation process for a woman, right? So in essence, I didn't have that initiation process, but in my specific experience, I've been real sick and I've almost died and have had 2 major organ transplants. And to me, that suffering was an initiation into my greater, fuller self. So, part of that is this relationship between some sort of like ritualized suffering and our opportunities to evolve and to like learn more about ourselves. And for me, not being a mother to a child constantly makes me feel like I want to mother and care for the world, right? And again, it's me using discernment of what is mine to care for and what is mine to let suffer in experience, because that's their process to their own initiation. So it's how do I love but keep that balance and space?
There's so much to what you just said there, because it's first of all, you could look at it's like you have this innate feminine need to care, but if you're not careful, if you're not wielding that consciously, that could turn into a masculine projection of that, like take my, receive my care. You're projecting that.
I only feel like a woman when I'm controlling my care. So that's been the process of me
tied to your
sitting back,
self-worth.
tied to my self-worth, and realizing that seeing people suffer is a part of the evolutionary process. So as much as we want to save people and help people, I, as the person who wants to focus on the collective healing, have to also step back and get out of my own way and let the sacred do its work with individuals who are suffering within their own process too, because in my suffering has been my greatest evolution.
And that's the other part that I was going to touch on, is that you have this feminine, the goddess Hela, or Hel from the Norse. She is all about just like letting you reflect and kind of feel through the choices of your life. And there's she's tied to the rune Hagalaj, which translates to hell. There's that word again. And Hel is a very harsh. It's a nature force, right? The mother nature, but it's that kind of challenge and struggle and a bit of chaos that brings about the most growth and actually does cultivate and nurture, but from a kind of a harsh way, let's say.
Logan, this is so on point, and it's complicated because a woman who's done her work is not going to please and reflect what somebody wants to see, feel, or hear to be seen or heard. This is the complexity of a woman coming into her true womanhood, is that she will mirror as a feedback loop to anybody, especially the male, where there's an imbalance. And then then it's confusing, because then it's like, wait, is this woman this? Is she that? Or that? The true woman is going to let the reflection happen. And then sometimes
Dude.
the blame will go on to that woman.
And there's that theme again,
True.
because Hel, the goddess Hel, she appears as either a beautiful woman or a corpse. And that is up to you, because she is that reflection. Just like Rodney talked about the moon earlier, and we were talking about the reflection. I love that there's that theme throughout this, is the feminine is just going to hold up that mirror, and she doesn't need to do anything or make anything happen. That self-reflection is a powerful alchemical force on its own.
But drastically misunderstood.
Yes.
And we propagate women who perform and show up to please. So it's very complicated when a woman steps into her authenticity as that, because more haters and confusion is going to come her way. So again, it's working. These are very powerful forces. Let's listen. We're talking about wizardry, magic, mystics. Like when you're really doing the thing, you have no idea what you're messing with.
And
it's incredibly powerful.
I think that there's a general, I don't want to speak too generally. Okay, so as a mom, I'm as a single mom especially, it's very apparent that my approach to parenting, my natural approach to parenting is very different than the typical masculine approach to parenting. I am not naturally super oriented over linear consequences and the kind of the structure aspect, and that which, our society kind of says over and over, and people say over and over and over and over and over about how, consequences should happen, as a parent, we should do this and we should do that. And the school system basically has this linear system. And I tend to be much more relational and much more, connective. And my approach is different. And I find myself being criticized quite a bit by well-meaning people who have just their assumptions around what I should do. And I've come to the conclusion, like, I could, like, there's a call for me as a mother, to being a single mother, to be more masculine in how I consequence or discipline my children. And yet it goes against my nature. So I default in where I feel like is my area of specialty. And I want to be kind of given some respect for that and some trust. But honestly, it feels like I'm in a very defensive place. And I guess my point is that I think a lot of feminine ways, a lot of feminine aspects are not respected that much.
Well, I think if we could just all be together here in this moment and think about the beauty of being in right partnership. So we can express appropriately, but where we're at, and this isn't to condemn anybody, and especially you, Leslie, as a single mom, because I know the majority of my friends who actually are together in partnership aren't in the divine union, but forced to struggle to contain it and make it work, which is harder for the child. So none of us have been given the manual. Or we've overlooked it, or it's been stripped out away from us. So we have to just start where we are and rebuild that self-development so we can try to do this again with the help and support that we need as, the man and the woman, and working together.
Yeah, I guess I'm just bringing this up, not, clearly it's an issue of partnership would make it better. But also I want to just point out, when we're looking at this truth and freedom movement, we're looking at people like Dana Martin, David Rodriguez, who are talking about children and schools. And let's say Dana in particular is teaching and sharing about a whole alternative paradigm of parenting that I would describe as very much more of a feminine approach. And that approach is very foreign, and there's a resistance to it. And that's kind of what
Right.
I'm pointing out.
So let me ask you, Leslie, I'm not familiar with Dana's work. I'm going to have to look into it, and I'm all on board and supportive because I have nieces and nephews and friends of, lots of children in my life about conscious parenting. I mean, I'm 100% on board. But do you think that education will have to do a polarization to come back to a harmony? You're saying that this way of educating is a little less linear and more feminine. But what about for those children? One thing I want to bring up that's very critical that I just realized yesterday is that there are different types of people. And there are people who've grown up feeling constrained in the patriarchy and need that embrace of the feminine, creative, experiential to get more balanced. But then there's this whole subsect of people who grew up with no structure and completely out, like in creative la disassociative land, and sending someone like that to a feminine style of education might be a disservice.
You're right.
Maybe it's an issue of really figuring out assessment wise, who is this child and what really is their personality, or this individual's, what is their background, so we can get them the proper opposite to help them integrate.
Yeah, good point.
That balance is so key, because if I'm being honest, I do think, or I find Dana's work to be a little bit imbalanced in that way. I think there's a lot of value there, absolutely. That especially when you're looking at like public school, it's way too rigid, very just complete left brain. Let's cut all of the creative, curriculums and all that kind of stuff. But I think the truth kind of lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
There needs to be that structure, especially for a young developing mind, whether boy or girl. That structure is very useful and helpful. It's like the pot that contains the plant that's trying to grow, but then also leaving lots of room for creativity and flow and, natural curiosity and things like that.
And I'm quite sure that's in her paradigm. But my point is that I think that, when it comes to healing, there's, first of all, just describing the experience of what is, there's a general experience of a bias towards left brain, masculine run parenting approach or education system, right? And so the feminine, in order for that balance to happen, the feminine needs to be seen and valued, right? So there is, I think, that a certain natural need for a pendulum swing in healing, but it doesn't have to go to the far extreme.
Right.
Leslie, I think that what you're saying, I'd like to just kind of add on, is I actually feel a little bit of the opposite in the same way. This is complicated, but I'm going to try to say it simply. Sometimes the simplest things are the most complicated. Is I grew up with no structure. My parents were 18 when they had me. They did do nothing about themselves, and they still struggle with that today. So for me, I was like in a fairy tale land, like quiet, reserved, away from the public, disassociated in my creative state. I was a dancer, I was an artist, right? So I actually need to be seen by a healthy masculine. Like that container on the other end needs to, that was my, let's just go here. That was what I integrated to become the woman I am today. I had to find that. You know what I mean? So far as women who are seeking to find a deeper balance, and again, I'm not there, but I'm working on it. There has to be an understanding of who are you? Are you a creative soul who tends to disassociate from reality? Like, who are you? Or are you a super structured, patriarchal, left brain scientist? First off, who are you? And then you need to find an understanding of the opposite, and then work on healing your relationships with those people that almost encouraged you to feel safer in the opposite. So for me, a lot of that was developing a forgiveness for my dad and his lack of, his passivity and his lack of awareness, and really forgiving him. And then the structures I worked under that were predominantly left-brained, like I had to find an understanding and a forgiveness in order for me to more fully embody my feminine and not hate the patriarchy and have anger towards men and distrust men. Like that helped me to cultivate trust by forgiving, but not accepting, but just forgiving what happened and what I did to survive when I didn't have the emotional literacy to do it. And then to find love for my dad again, knowing that he may never evolve and wake up in this lifetime to the degree I'd like, but to respect that and to move on without any hate, anger, or frustration. Like that's been a huge critical aspect for me embodying more of my feminine energy.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'll just say, like, my childhood, my upbringing, I did not have, I had a lot of freedom. I did not have a lot of structure. I didn't have a really defined, consequencing. I was very free. And I value the freedom that I had as actually being really essential for me to understand, like, a lot of intrinsic drives and value of my individuality, I guess, came from a certain amount of, like, lack of manipulation and coercion towards me as a child. Although also having experienced a father who was working too much, working a lot, and had a little bit of an anger issue that would come out a little explosively at times, right? And so I would say that as a child, having had a lot of room to explore was one of the best things ever. But then having the martial arts as a 13-year-old brought that masculine aspect of discipline, which I needed to learn, right? And so I had the masculine container of the discipline of a martial art and training and learning how to be, trained as an athlete. And, that was one of the most, like, balancing things that happened to me coming in, as an adult, so it's like that balance is absolutely necessary. One extreme or the other is going to do it.
I'd say anybody on this journey, Leslie, I hear exactly what you're saying. And I found that in my yoga practice, right? The structure, the discipline, the commitment. And anybody who's on this healing journey, I would highly suggest any form of martial art or yoga, something that combines the two, like the yin, the yang, right? The discipline with the creativity, because you need, and that gets you in your body when you're doing this kind of work too. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people within this community and beyond who are geniuses. They're so cognitively like just genius, but there's sometimes a lack of embodiment because there's not this, we are the mind and the body has wisdom as well. So if you find yourself doing shadow work and you're really in your head, something like, martial arts or yoga or some sort of, breath work, something that's going to pull you into the beauty and wisdom of the soma, the body, is really critical too, because those practices encompass yin and yang.
Yeah.
I think especially for the feminine, it's important to connect with the body, because that's where you really can get into your flow. Because again, masculinity is about doing, the feminine is about being, right? Just that being, existing in the body, being and embodying that essence. So really beautiful stuff. I wanted to first let the audience know I'm open to taking questions or calls. I've dropped the link down into the chat and pinned it. So if you do feel so emboldened and brave to jump on with us, you're more than welcome to. You can be on video or audio only if that's what you feel more comfortable with. But, open invitation there. Anyone with other questions, you can also drop in the chat. Just put question in all caps. But time-wise, we are getting kind of towards the end here. So what do you think in kind of can conclude and sort of put everything into a package about the central aspect of the feminine struggle and where women can kind of direct themselves towards kind of overcoming that, let's say?
I think
Leslie, go ahead. Do you want to go first?
Well, I'll just say something. That point you ended on about embodiment, I think, is really essential, and I do think that is the path, is coming into our body in the present moment and connect. And I feel a resonance to the earth as feminine in my relationship to nature and the earth, and through my my, I guess, observation of the earth and the feminine aspects of nature, that then I feel them within myself, and I can feel more of an embodiment of me, of myself as part of nature. So that's just one road I wanted to share. Yeah, to healing.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Stephanie?
I think that, Leslie, everything you're saying is spot on, is to connect with nature and our intrinsic beauty again, to love who we are, where we are, and to realize that, nothing that's meant for us will pass us by, and to realize that the right people, places, and things will arrive for us. We don't have to strive for it, look sexy for it, be a genius for it. Just fully, truly being ourselves is the gift. And I think I want to read this little quote that I love, and then I'll hand it over to you, Logan. It's by Maya Angelou, and it's on the struggle to maintain beauty. And she says, I've learned that no matter what happens or how bad it seems today, life does go on and it's going to be better tomorrow. I've learned that you can tell a lot about a person by the way he or she handles these three things: a rainy day, lost luggage, and tangled Christmas tree lights. I've learned that regardless of your relationship with your parents, you'll miss them when they're gone from your life. I've learned that making a living is not the same thing as making a life. I've learned that life sometimes gives you a second chance. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw some things back. I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I've learned that even when I have pains, I don't have to be one. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug, just a friendly pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've learned that people will forget what you've said, but people will never forget what you did and how you made them feel. So for me, staying in touch with my heart and my feelings is my biggest challenge that I continue to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think slowing down, for sure, especially women, slowing down in cultivating more of the presence of being, cultivate the art of being.
And allowing
And
too.
allowing and
Because that's
receiving.
the other end of that need to control, to
Yeah.
get a certain outcome, is just kind of like,
Exactly.
let the flow of things play out around. You're in control of yourself, but
Yeah.
just sort of like being in that stream and letting energy swirl around you, and just kind of letting things be what they are.
To really cultivate relaxation and letting go of that constant need to be vigilant and fix something or take care of someone, or mitigate against something, or be in the middle and be a peacemaker and a conflict resolver, but to just sort of be in trust that if we relax into our true nature, our natural state, and get in touch with our authentic self from the inside and express it out, that we will be in harmony, that there's a certain trust and faith here.
And a little bit of hope. I'd like to just add, as so far as, sexuality and partnership is, when a woman's done the work and she feels safe and she's contained with the right person, she can take on so many forms. And as so far as being sexy and exciting and new and different every day, if you've got the right couple, the possibilities are endless, and you won't need pornography. You won't need these external means, because your relationship will be so on fire and so sexy and so raw that you'll be filled, both of you. So that's my hope for our future.
And I would say for people, be patient with each other. I think a lot of us have become very knee-jerk quick in like putting up our shields and our criticism and cautious, and we're like all sideways and squirming, and I think we have to just like slow down, be present, be present for the other person, seek understanding, be compassionate for ourselves, be compassionate for our friends and our partners. I think that's
love it, Leslie. Love it. We're always in a rush to get somewhere. Where are you going?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Just
We don't
be
know
patient.
because we're rushing too fast. We don't
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Think about it from an energetic perspective. The masculine projects energy outward, the feminine is drawing in. She's magnetic, and it's not about just like go here, do that, be, whatever. It's just kind of like being that magnetic force, letting things come to you, and you don't have to force things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other piece of being a female to me is I think about that. I think that the feminine embodies everything. Like, if you look at nature, you see the hurricane, you see,
Mm-hmm.
the tsunami, you see the light breeze, you see the sun, you see and in a sense, I feel like I have all of that in me. I am all of that. And when we are facing a situation that is threat, we can choose to be in our feminine expression and be Hela, be Kali, be Durga, and still be very feminine. And there's times when we're up against, if we're up against something that's violent, we're going to pull up an aspect of protection or a feminine expression against that is needed, right? We have to be that for ourselves. And that is partly how we are going to be able to find and attract, I think, the men that will allow us to put those harder sides aside.
I see what you're saying, Leslie. It's the complexity comes down to, when you meet energetically, what is the response? And is it a reaction? Is it a trauma response reaction? Is it like, how are you meeting others? And to have the discernment to know when you can be soft and when you're going to be that mirror. And I think that's what I continue to work on, is realizing how powerful the feminine is and how she embodies these many mystical natures as well as grounded natures. But in the real life, in the real world,
Yes.
how do I show up in each moment? And for me, I'm learning and practicing as we speak, but it's when I don't overthink it that I naturally respond with what needs to be responded with in that moment rather than an overthinking.
As long as trauma's healed and trauma response isn't doing the talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we don't have any takers in the call in, which is fine. There's not always the most demand for it. I think people are shy, and that's okay. But yeah, I think this was a really great conversation. I'm so grateful for you two for showing up and sharing all that you have, all that you are. It's a real gift and an honor. And thank you, everyone who has tuned in to the live today and been active in the chats. Always really appreciated as well. Of course, if you did get value from this, if you enjoyed it or learned something, please consider just dropping a quick like down below. It really helps out. And subscribe if you liked what you heard here today and want to get more of that. Make sure you click the bell as well. So I think that's going to wrap up today's conversation. Definitely go follow these women. They're doing really amazing work. If y'all both want to tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. Go ahead, Leslie.
My website is alivethrive.life, and I'm also on the One Great Work Network. And I'm part of a podcast called Dissolving the Divide, and you can find that on YouTube. So we've got Dissolving the Divide. I've got a podcast that I'm developing with Chris Jansen called Awake at the Lake, and you can find that on his platform, endevil.life. And then, of course, my just general channel, alivethrive.life.
And you guys can find me at stephaniemodavas.com. I have a lot of my work on there. I do have a YouTube channel, same name. And then my business, my work is awakeninghealthcare.com.
Beautiful. Love it. Go follow these women. They're doing great things. And I appreciate everyone tuning in. Well, we have a last minute guest. I guess we can bring you on, but just for a couple minutes. Robbie, you're live on the Wizard Factory show. Welcome.
Oh,
Can you
hey,
hear
how's
us?
it going?
Hey, what's
Hi.
up, man?
Yes, yes, yes. Going well, yeah, especially due to all the input from everyone. It's been really great. I've just been on the job, but it's made it endurable, I guess. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
think it's amazing what everything that's been said, and my heart and mind goes out to everyone in the chat as well, and everyone who might hear this later, because I just really think that it has been a lot touched on as far as like being single, right?
Mm.
And I can't help but think of as a lot of things these days. Ever since I left organized religion,
Mm.
got off the Jesus juice, for example, stopped reading anything of that nature for a while, then you come back with new eyes and you see what it means to have an eye single. I think that the two forces, the yin and the yang, in people who are bearing these things, like you said, or what we have to endure is the word that for the program, and that's the perfect word for it. But if we endure it well, you know nature is making us whole again. It's making individuals that are strong, much stronger than before. And then only, it's based upon how strong we are as men and women that we can have strong union. You can't have a strong union, with the opposite, or even with your fellow beings at all, if you don't have that oneness or the
Mm.
single. You know what I'm saying? If the two aren't one and single in your you know your being.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Uh,
relationships really just amplify the individuals. So if you have two
Mhm.
weak and wounded people coming together, it's just going to create, magnify that 10x to whatever they have going on internally. But conversely, if you have
right.
two strong people who have done the work and they're coming together, that strength will be amplified as well. And then they're much bigger than the sum of their parts.
So that's right.
Comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah. Well, you said amplification too, and a lot of you guys touched on some Jungian type things, and he called it amplification, I believe. But that definitely is the case. That what we're talking about is it's amplifying the not just the individual, but the indivisible. These
Mhm.
two, Mother,
Yeah.
Father, God, they're always going to be engaging. These two energies, these solar lunar energies, are always going to be engaging one another. But the true power of the individual, human being, is that we can bring them together as the children. I call it the Marty McFly effect, right? We're simultaneously the fruit or the result of the union of these two opposites, but we're also the catalyst for the union, and we can bring them together either in a toxic way or bring them together and have peace. Either way, we're going to be stuck in the middle, So
Mhm.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
points. Thank
Great
you.
comment. Thank you, Robbie.
well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
You guys have a good one.
Thank
Take
you.
You
care.
too.
Awesome. Well, there you go. We had one guest on. Appreciate that. Um, maybe more next time. But yeah, that's going to wrap us up for today. Good place to leave it off. So again, thank you both for being here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Really hope you enjoy. Of course, make sure you look forward to next week where we'll be concluding this. We'll be joined again by these two as well as Will and I, and we'll getting much more into like the kind of closing the gap and healing those wounds and kind of renewing the vows is what I'm calling that episode. So it's going to be a good one. A nice, wrapping it all up together in a nice package. So I will see you there next week at noon Central. But of course, until next time, as always, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged. Much love, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.